On another day in the life of a designer. What we're going to be tapping into tonight is a more dangerous season. So make sure that you like and subscribe. Make sure that you share with your friends and family so that way they can catch these gems we drop in here at Dreams of Rulers Street Fashion and Dreams of Rulers. So, you know what I'm saying? Also, make sure that you check out our A Lot of Fashion podcast where we got, a new episode each and every week. We're going to take a break this upcoming week, but make sure that you check out our latest episode where we talk about the business of perception. We also got the From the Mud collection, which is available on all streaming platforms as far as our spoken word album. Our apparel is available on our website, and our book, our poetry book, is available on all book platforms and at your local library. So make sure that you tap in. Appreciate everybody that's been showing love, showing support, helping the brand to grow. We're getting closer and closer to, our immediate goals. So, I can't really complain on that front. But, we got a lot of room to grow and, just constantly trying to find new ways and, strengthen the ways that are, strong already. You feel me? We already got a strong foundation here, especially with Day in the Life of a Designer already. We just want to keep that, train rolling. You feel me? So let's get into it. Tonight we're going to be talking about a more dangerous, season. This episode is about what if nobody buys your products. You feel me? Your apparel, your clothes. If nobody buys what you create, does that mean the vision was wrong or that the market hasn't caught up to it yet? That's our opening question for the night. All the day ones know we always open up with a question. This episode should be less about motivation, but more about the uncomfortable relationship between creative conviction and commercial reality. You feel me? What if nobody buys? You know what I'm saying? Every designer says that, they believe in their work, but what happens when, you put the work in front of people and nobody buys it? With the uncomfortable reality of it, a designer can love the work, the audience can appreciate the concept, the product can, be well made, and it's still not sell. You feel me? Sometimes you just gotta ask yourself, does a lack of sales invalidate the vision? And no, not automatically. You feel me? But it also can't be simply ignored. Sales are, information. They aren't always, judgment. You know, would I still make it? Nobody bought it. This is, the first real test. You feel me? If I knew, hey, what's good? Carter, appreciate you for tapping in. What's good, Saturn? Appreciate you for tapping in. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure that y'all like and subscribe. We're talking about a more dangerous game tonight. Or more dangerous season, you feel me? Especially when it comes down to a fashion designer, creative director, fashion brand, you feel me? What if nobody buys your product? What if nobody buys it and, I'm creating art or, I'm building a business? Because those are two different things, when nobody just buys your collection and I still need to create. Of course, that's called creative conviction, you feel me? Dreams of Rulers, we aren't trying to build a private art project, you feel me? Trying to build a street luxury fashion business. That means, the vision eventually has to find an audience. And, you don't abandon the vision because the product failed. You investigate why the product failed. And when does perception become stubbornness? This is where, the episode gets dangerous because I believe in this. You let me figure out how to make it work. That's, persistence, but stubbornness is, I believe in this, therefore nothing about it needs to change. And those aren't the same. You feel me? And the idea, sometimes you got to ask yourself, is it wrong? Is the product wrong? Is the price wrong? Is the positioning wrong? Is the audience wrong? Is the timing or distribution wrong? And is the storytelling insufficient? You feel me? You got to protect the vision, question the execution. And primarily, I'm just recording and streaming, these live streams on different mindsets for a designer, the behind the scenes for a designer, and as well to that, making a lot of fashion podcasts, promoting, the From the Mud collection. That's the main thing that we got going on right now, Carter. But to your question, to a question that, we have here tonight, as far as the topic at hand, why, nobody buys. We're just focusing in on, different things that designers and even brand owners and creative directors can hone in on, as far as, why a product isn't selling, why, they need to do more investigation, not necessarily on the product, but more so on, more so on just the overall marketing plan and, business strategy that, they're implementing with the product. And I appreciate you for doing that as well, too, my brother. Make sure that you, subscribe, share with your friends and family as well, too. I'm going to get back into it, though. When should a designer change the product? Changing the product isn't necessarily selling out. Sometimes it's, design intelligence. You can change a fit, fabric, construction, pricing, packaging, color, distribution without changing the underlying philosophy. The philosophy might remain, as far as for us, street luxury fashion, but, how you communicate that philosophy through a garment can evolve. The vision tells, the designer where they're ultimately going. The feedback tells, the designer, me, whether I'm getting there. You feel me? When should, you refuse to change the vision? Now, there are things you shouldn't compromise just because they're difficult to sell. You feel me? Now, that is another thing, famine. Like, that applies too. But at the same time, a lot of times, the consumer is so caught up in what is already out there and doesn't get a chance to see the things that are, I guess you could say, more underground. And the price points underground aren't as high as the price points as, you see in the mainstream, especially with our brand. Like a hoodie, it's not going to be like $125, you feel me? Like, you cut that joint down a little bit. We brought that down to like between 70 to about 85 at the max, but everything is within reason. I don't got shit with over shit that's over like probably about $150 like in my shop right now. So you could definitely, tap in, get some high quality products, you feel me? And all the blanks that I use in order to create my clothes come from the top brands that you guys are already buying from anyway. You feel me? So it's not like, I'm selling you something that, is a new project or, that hasn't really, been tested within the market, to see if it actually does good or to see if the quality is actually elite or is even, the craftsmanship with it isn't top notch. You feel me? That's how I work. You feel me? Like, I'm trying to actually make a street luxury fashion house. I'm not trying to, bullshit y'all in any way, shape, or form. You feel me? Here at Dreams of Rulers, we primarily, are trying to protect that philosophy, that, originality, my design, perspective, storytelling, and ultimately keeping that long-term fashion house ambition. You know what I'm saying? The danger is if, every disappointing sale result calls, me to change my identity, eventually I wouldn't even have a brand. So, you know, you have to react to the market more so than changing your philosophy. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate you. Definitely do. Definitely appreciate all y'all for tapping in with us. You feel me? Um, the next thing is selling proof of value. This is a deeper business question. You know what I'm saying? A product selling doesn't automatically mean it's great because, there's a lot of brands out there that sell subpar products, but, have high, recognition, high reputations within the market, and, have remained over, 5 years. You feel me? So, it can be a result of great marketing, great timing, you know, celebrity exposure and partnerships, scarcity in the market, and, what I'm saying, distribution and relevance, and also to, Fam's point, you know, your price point. Because, if inflation, and especially with now, companies having to deal with tariffs, not us, but, you know what I'm saying, oh yeah, nah, for sure. That's just how the game work, man. Like people gonna come in and out at first. You feel me? They not going, totally support what you got going on, but they gonna want to see what you got going on. You feel me? And then, as you keep going, you know, people start to, stick around, start to hear what you got to say, start to tap into, what you got going on, and then, you know, that's when you start to build that community, start to build the trust in the marketplace, like these big brands, and we start to do something real versus what they doing out here. You feel me? But it's part of the game. And like I said, man, I appreciate you. It's going good, bro. I promise you that. All you gotta do is just keep going. I started my YouTube channel about 3.5, 4 years ago, late 2023, and you know, first year only had I'd say about 83 subscribers on that joint. Barely was getting any views. Then the next year, I kept putting in more work, posting about 3 times a day. Then ended up getting about, I think it was like 150 to like 200. And then that third year, that's when we fully went up. Like I had got to like 500 at one point, kind of got stagnant, kind of like where I was at with this joint. And then like from there on, I just been going up from like 500 to like not over 900 now. You feel me? And now the views on, my short content went back to, being minimal. But you got to understand, first, when you first are getting your channel started, YouTube is trying to understand your algorithm, not, the algorithm has set for everybody. You feel me? It's trying to find the audience. And when I say algorithm, I'm saying audience. So it's trying to find the proper audience for you to actually, find your place and your audience to communicate what you're putting out. Once it actually finds that audience, your videos are going to start to continue to grow because of the simple fact that you tapped in with them. Yeah, now what I would do is I just make multiple channels, bro. I just make multiple channels at one time, and then post a video on one channel as the main joint, and then the other joints use it as clip channels. But you can still post the long form channels on that joint too. That's what everybody doing nowadays anyway. But let's get back to the topic at hand. We almost done with that, John. I don't want to stay on here too long because I still got to get on Kick, talk about the same topic, you feel me? But, you know what I'm saying? You could definitely hit me up on, our Dreams of Ruler page, you feel me? Um, and, ask, any questions, you feel me, regarding this, you feel me? Um, yeah, like, that shit, like, you just got to kind of watch, like, how the streamers is doing shit on all these platforms, just so that way you get context of how to, build your channel, safeguard your content, and um, solidify your business. What I mainly would say is that for anybody is that if you're going to actually start a YouTube channel and actually build to do content creation, like get an LLC. It's only like $200, $300, 300 max. Get an LLC, so that way you own your content automatically. So that way you don't gotta trademark everything. You just trademark, say the name of, like an episode series, and go from there. And then you still own all the video content. So say if somebody tries to use your content, you can sue them and you get money for that. Or, they can request to use your content and they automatically got to give you a split on that content. So, the more you put the content out there, the more you're going to grow, the more that, people are going to see you. You feel me? That's just how it works. It's just that for me personally, I don't have a team right now. I'm trying to build that team so that way, you know what I'm saying, I can have the content being put out at a faster rate and, on multiple platforms as well, too. So that way, we can stay tapped in with y'all and, keep growing as well, too. That's just how it works. But, something extraordinary can struggle commercially just because you know how, the mainstream constructs work. Sometimes creative works just don't blend with, certain atmospheres. So, what does a sale actually prove? Someone was willing to exchange money for the product at the moment under those conditions. That's valuable information, and it isn't, entire definition of creative value. The difference, between value and distribution, you can challenge your own business thinking, but maybe the product isn't reaching enough people. And that's ultimately what I like to say about, when you're not doing good in sales. It's because the product isn't reaching enough people. The audience was good, Tay. Appreciate you for tapping in. Maybe the audience doesn't understand. Maybe the story isn't being communicated. Maybe the product isn't accessible. Maybe the market isn't ready for it overall. But am I measuring the value of the work or the effectiveness of my ability to distribute it? Those are two different problems. And even Jim Jones had mentioned this, John, a few years back on the same topic at hand. You feel me? The design problem can be, the product isn't compelling. The business problem can be the right people, aren't encountering that joint. And then the communication problem can be people don't understand why it matters. Don't confuse the three. You feel me? What Dreams of Rulers is actually testing out here is connecting this episode to, our bigger mission. Can, I sell clothes would be the simple test, but what we're really testing is, can I build an audience around a new way of thinking about fashion? And that's the bigger experience with street luxury fashion. Feel me? The garments are evidence, the collections are evidence, the audience represents the feedback, and the philosophy is constant and consistent. I'm not trying to prove that every design is right. I'm just trying to build something strong enough to survive being wrong sometimes. You feel me? If you look at the greatest success, and even if you go to our Instagram page and look at our story, we already got a glimpse of Frank Sinatra, Babe Ruth, and a couple of other celebrities that, had a high success rate and, perspective. But when you actually look at their reps, their attempts, their, ways of trying to succeed, you will see that they only succeeded at no greater than 20% of the reps that they ever put in. Tupac as well too. Dude put out like 151 tracks and only had I think 2 platinum albums. So just think about that. The greatest don't become great because, they were exceptionally talented. Nah, they were consistent. They had some gifts, some skills, and they kept using them joints in the right way each and every time they showed up. The decision, the hard question, what would make me change my mind? Nothing. You feel me? And that's dangerous. That's the answer. A great designer needs conviction and, intellectual flexibility. Establish a rule. Never abandon the vision because of, one failure. Never protect a bad execution just because you're emotionally attached to it. What if nobody buys? That's the question every designer eventually has to face. I've eventually faced it sometimes, you feel me? Some of my collections haven't got any sales, you feel me? Some have. But, I realize that I'm not afraid of that answer. If nobody buys something I believe in, I have to be honest enough to investigate why. Maybe the product needs to change, maybe the price needs to change, maybe the story isn't clear, and maybe haven't reached enough people yet. But that doesn't automatically mean the vision is wrong. Dreams of Rulers is bigger than, a vision, bigger than, one garment, one collection, and one sales number. I'm trying to build a street fashion, street luxury house. You feel me? If I'm serious about that, I have to learn how to, protect my vision without becoming a prisoner of my own ideas. And, that's why, with this collection from the mud, that joint was a little bit different than some of the collections I've done before, like Views of the Trap, Build the Throne. And then, I got other collections like, DOR new releases and brand apparel that, are more mainstream. And that's ultimately the goal, is just trying to, test the waters, see new niches, see new experiences that I can tap into with my art. So that way, I ultimately can keep giving y'all the best product. You know what I'm saying? If you don't believe in something deeply, nobody will ever want it. And how long will, you keep building before you change your direction? That's the ultimate question. So ultimately, what I like to say at the end of these streams is keep visualizing your purpose, because if you put a solid plan together, you start doing the research on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month, year to year, start thinking on a year-to-year basis, start putting yourself in position for the future, your dreams and goals will come to fruition. Just like I was telling Carter earlier, you feel me? You just keep going with what you're doing, but you learn from your mistakes, and then you just get smarter at that jump. You know what I'm saying? That's how you just keep growing, keep getting better. You got to learn the system, because everything that we're doing has a code to it. That's why they made the Matrix. You feel me? You just got to learn the codes, learn how to play the game, and execute that motherfucker. So once you start doing that, your dreams and goals will start coming to fruition. Like I said, make sure you check out the From the Mud collection, check out the poetry book and album. You feel me? I appreciate all y'all for definitely tapping in tonight. Show, more growth of what we trying to do here at Dreams of Rulers. And I hope to, see y'all again tomorrow. Keep visualizing. I'm out.